your name, your birthday, and how long you've lived in Hernando County?
Sure. My name is Ronald Cecil Daniel. I was born October the 4th, 1945, here in Brooksville.
And what part of the county have you lived in most of the time you've been here?
Pretty much. I have lived in the northern part of the county, north of Brooksville, about 6 miles. It's in a hammock area known as the Antilega hammock area.
What is it called again?
Antilega.
Antilega?
A lot of people misspell it.
I'll get this correct
but
spelling on that.
It's the hammock vegetation terrain is more damp than you find on the west side.
Okay.
You got the big oak trees like we have here in town, scattered throughout that part of the county, and you get a lot more humidity than you would if you were on the west coast. So it's a unique area to live in. But I've lived there a good portion of my life, still there and enjoying it. Well, basically, from the time I was growing up, it was very rural. Most of what was going on here in the county, I believe, was agriculture, and a lot of private-owned large tracts of land, with citrus groves and truck farms and that sort of thing. And the town of Brooksville itself was basically up here around the courthouse square. Mm-hmm. We had no shopping centers until probably, I think the first shopping center was Brook Plaza that came in around the early 60s.
Okay.
And then the one across the street, Hernando, it came in second. But
so you remember that going in, that shopping plaza?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, that was a big thing, because back then we'd have to go to Tampa because that was the largest close town really to do a lot of shopping, because that's where we go do our major Christmas shopping, because you didn't have a lot of big stores here.
Right. And how long did it take you to get to Tampa? Do you remember?
Oh, probably it was a 2-lane highway on 41 then, so we were. You'd figure an hour getting to Tampa.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, at least back then. And
that's so
spend the day down there. You were planning on spending the whole day when you went to Tampa.
Right.
So it was quite a big deal for a young person like myself.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you remember which stores were in Tampa were big at the time that you all would go to?
They had just put in the first mall in northern part of Tampa.
Okay.
Yeah, outside of the main downtown area of Tampa. Mm-hmm. And that's where we always headed to, because that was, and I can't remember the name right off, but it was the first malls in Tampa on the north side, and it was a big thing.
Yeah.
Interstates sure. Did not exist.
Right, so. Right. So everybody was coming down 41 to go to the mall.
They were. Mm-hmm. They had built a new school down here in the area where most of the schools are now, the primary. Mm-hmm. And that's where I started school. And during that time, the county was trying to get most of the kids moved in from the country areas, because they had these small country schools throughout the county. Mm-hmm. So they were gradually bringing in the students and then into town once they got schools ready for them, and then they'd close down the old schools.
Right.
And
how long was the bus ride in?
I think from where I lived it probably took maybe 20 minutes time they stopped after they picked me up.
Not bad.
And got into school, which now you can make it down 10.
Sure.
The schools itself, the teachers were pretty strict.
Yeah.
And they were very big on discipline. Mm-hmm. Like here it was always yes ma'am, no ma'am, that kind of thing, which you don't hear much of today.
Right.
You had a closer relationship with your classmates because classes were fairly small, but I think you had a closer relationship because you basically, once you left school in the afternoon, got on the bus, you get home in an area like where I live, there wasn't a whole lot to do. You made your own entertainment. Right. So you're looking forward to get back to school to have your playmates, So,
right.
And I think the kids were a lot closer. Life was different. Mm-hmm. And you didn't have a lot of, now most everybody has a TV in about every room. You're lucky to have a TV at that time.
Right.
And
did you have a phone growing up?
We did have one phone, but that didn't come into our area until the middle 50s.
Oh, okay. So before the middle of the 50s, no phones
right
out there?
Down where I live. Mm-hmm. And I was 6 miles out of town, so we did have a pay station at a local grocery store that my grandparents owned at the time, and people would come there all hours of the night to use a phone because it was a pay station that Southern Bell put in. But most of the houses at that time didn't have one in.
What was the name of the grocery store that they owned?
It was, my grandparents' name was Jones, so it's kind of like Jones Country Store right on the corner. You know,
North of Brooksville up there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It was out in the Hammock area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Life was pretty safe. You know, your parents weren't scared for you to go off and ways away from home. And so we did a lot of that. We did, you know, you climbed trees, you kind of made your own thing. You know, if there were a local pond areas, we would grab a fishing pole and go fishing. You dug your own fish bait because we did the wiggler worms, you know, and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the best kind.
So yeah, so it was good. I have a lot of great memories, and a lot of times if you could get the parents to go camping, you'd go camping maybe for a weekend because out west of Brooksville was undeveloped. It was all called the Sand Hills, and it was pretty much wide open country because the only thing out there was some Roman cattle that some of the cattlemen used, and they branded their cattle then, so they knew where to round them up. But there were a lot of ponds in the Sand Hills that you could camp out and fish, and you know,
Just go camping.
clean your fish and cook them right there.
Yeah.
We all pretty much learned to hunt.
Okay.
You know, I think I got my first 410 shotguns when I was only about 12.
Really?
Because I was from a lot of families were a hunting family back then, and you went deer hunting, squirrel hunting, but mostly I was into squirrel hunting. I didn't have the patience with deer.
Really?
Sitting on a stand for hours on end.
There's plenty of squirrels, right?
Oh yeah.
It's harder to hit though.
Yeah, but you know, and back then it was considered a sport, but at the same time you didn't shoot them and leave them; you used them to eat.
Yeah. What's the best squirrel recipe you got?
I always liked fried squirrel.
Fried squirrel?
A lot of people made stew, but I was really never fond of that as well. I like fried squirrel was my favorite. I remember in the early 60s, Town floated away.
I heard there was a lot of rain.
We had a big flood, and at that time US 41 was the only way to get to Tampa because there were no interstates. And they literally had to close parts of 41 because it was too deep with water, and you know, the Greyhound buses were going elsewhere to get around. But and thousands and thousands of chickens died because of the flood in Town.
Really?
And that was their major industry, was eggs and chickens at that time. So it was, and following that, to alleviate a lot of the flooding that was going around here, the state established the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and they had a program along with the Corps of Engineers and the state, you know, to come up with these areas to try to protect people when it comes to big floods. Well, one of the first things they did in this area was the Town Canal.
Okay.
So the Corps of Engineers, they dug that and so on, but you know, it pretty much has been considered a dry canal since the 60s. We had a big freeze in 1962, which basically wiped out a lot of the citrus grove industry here in Hernando County.
Now, was that the winter following the flood in Town?
Yeah, I believe it was. Well, then following the winter being over, then the owners tried to bring them back to a certain extent, even though it was going to take a long time. So they hired people to go in and you know, hoe around the trees, fertilize them, prune them, which they need to be pruned, all the dead wood then.
Oh yeah.
So I went to work in the citrus groves.
Did you? Wow. Oh, can you describe what that was like?
It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was blood, sweat, and tears, you know.
How old were you?
I was 17,
okay.
Going on 18 at that time. I just graduated from high school and was going to be going out to college in September, but I needed the money, so the first job I got was 85 cents an hour.
Doing what exactly in those?
Hoeing and fertilizing citrus trees, literally with your hand hoe, you know, like you would with a garden.
Right, right.
So I after about a month on that one, I quit that job and went with another company making 95 cents an hour pruning with a saw. So
a handsaw?
A handsaw.
A handsaw?
Yeah. they'd hire a group of us, and we would actually get up in the trees and handsaw with a handsaw no bigger than that. And they only had so many, what they call electric saws, that they'd hook up with a generator where they were long pole saws. And if you were lucky to be able to use one of those part of the time, we'd switch off.
Wow.
But it was hard work.
That sounds awful. It does. It sounds terrible.
So that was.
About how many trees do you think you fertilized and
Oh
pruned?
my God! You couldn't.
How many acres did you work through? Is an easier question.
Well, most of the grove owners were, hundreds of acres.
Wow.
That was a grove owner used that pretty much as their livelihood, and there were also a lot of big companies that owned a lot of acres of it too.
So were there a lot of guys your age, maybe even older, that's what they did for work that summers?
Yes. Yeah, my brother was a couple years younger than me. He was there. Some of the local people, like Bill Epley, the attorney here, he was there. So, it was regular people from Brooksville.
That year in 1962.
Oh, it was awful. I just never wanted to
never
do that
eaten
again.
orange since, right?
So yeah, I had. So that was one of the big things, and before I left here, and during that same period of the '60s, we had the first big development of Spring Hill, and the Mackle brothers bought several thousand acres to establish this town called Spring Hill. So they came in, they bought thousands of acres, and the next thing you know, they were advertising to people all over the world to come in, settle in Spring Hill, this grandiose thing planned, and they started in with Spring Hill Drive, and it kind of went from there. And that was one of the big things that really put Hernando County on the map.
Do you remember seeing advertisements for Spring Hill in newspapers and everything? Do you remember what they might have said, or at least the impression that you got after looking at them or looking at them with your friends?
Yeah, and I was pretty closely involved with that at a later time. They had brochures all over the place. They would, of course, had places where they would bus them in, bring them down here from the north and wine and dine them and try to get them to sign a contract to build a house. Of course, later on, that's where my wife came from. She came down with her parents, and they had bought one through one of those things, and so anyway, it's
not all bad. Right?
It turned out good, for me.
Right.
So,
do you remember the cost of those plots? Or
you could get a lot for just a few thousand back then.
Any other major events between Spring Hill's development and present day that you think might have, shaped the way the county has turned out or will turn out?
Well, the medical centers has been a big addition to Hernando County, because as I grew up, we only had one hospital, and it was Lykes Memorial then, which now is turned into Brooksville Regional.
Right.
And then they later built a new one over not very far, and then of course now they're out west. But since that time, there's been a lot of medical facilities come in throughout, especially the west side of the county, and we've got I think just about everything here now that you would have to, back then you would have to go to Tampa at the closest, if not fly to another or drive to another state that had those kind of medical facilities.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's really, that part has been a good thing. And the other thing, we have a lot of snowbirds here, because they only here half the year and go back north, and they have a home in Spring Hill or wherever in that area. Well, it's good for them, because they can pretty much get any kind of treatment here they want before they go back if they get sick.
It'll keep them coming back.
Yeah, it keeps them coming back.
As far as socially or culturally speaking, or in any other way, how has the county changed? How have you watched it change over the years, over the past few decades?
Well, the beginning change was because you're getting different nationalities in here. The blacks had their side of town, we had ours with schools, same way with schools and everything. And then, of course, once that came to pass and you had the integration, well, then you also started having a lot of these other nationalities moving in here, especially from some of the northern states, that had started living up there, that came from a lot of the other countries. And so it just kind of intermixed and started moving just like to what it is today.
Yeah, big old mixing bowl.
Yeah.
As far as economically, did you see a decline in just the wealth of the county as the citrus groves declined, or do you think that it was able to hold its own with the development of the land and everything?
It hurt for a while.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the big grove owners, they had, and farmers, they made pretty good money, and they employed a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But it hurts the economy because, I mean, you go in and have to plant all new trees. It's a long time before those trees bear again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. At least 10 years before you
get
a really good crop.
So you lost a lot of people that worked. Some of those people worked all their life in those kind of jobs.
Yeah.
And it really hurt them. Mm-hmm.
Did people move out of the county, you think? Did they just spread out elsewhere?
A lot of them spread out elsewhere just to keep going.
In what direction do you see the county going from here?
Oh, I think it's going to continue to grow. I think we realize new businesses continue to come in from elsewhere. Mm-hmm. You've got a great population increase, mm-hmm. and the housing development that I just mentioned just continues on. It may slow down for a while, but it picks back up. You know, mm-hmm. we've sort of been into a slight recession, I guess, if you want to call it that, for a while, but it's picking back up some, I'm hearing, and I don't think that's going to stop. I think we're going to continue to see things better as time goes on. It takes a long time to get over a big hit, you know, like we've had in the recent few years.
Yeah, that one hurt.
Right, because there for a while, the housing market just was insane. That's all I could say, because people were putting prices on stuff that wasn't even realistic, and people were buying. Yeah. And then, of course, all the foreclosures started once the bottom fell out, and so it's just was awful. But I think, you know, the house development is here to stay. I think we've learned a lot from that. And it unfortunately takes a lot of bad things to happen to really straighten things back out. But at the time, I kept saying, you know, this can't continue, because some of these people did put their house on the market and it wasn't on there 24 hours before they had a contract.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that cannot.
Too good to be true.
Oh, yes.
And what do you think about the rural areas of the county now, north of Brooksville, east of Brooksville? Do you see those staying as they are in that old Florida country, or do you think that development's really going to creep up and out and kind of take over those areas?
You'll continue to see some development. I mean, I live out north where I grew up, mm-hmm. north of town there, and the old rock mines now are putting their lands into subdivisions. I mean, there's already this huge one right a quarter mile up the road from where I live on 98 that has been planned, going through the permitting process for the last 4 years. And they got this grand golf course planned, and, you know, that's a typical thing all these subdivisions have. Also had a lot of change in things too that better protect our natural resources. You know, as I mentioned, the state came out with programs to help protect lands, mm-hmm. whereas used to you didn't really have to get a permit to do whatever you wanted to on land. And when, especially like the Water Management District came in, following that, the state came up with other water management districts to cover the whole state of Florida to protect our natural resources, like the rivers and the floodplains where people were trying to build or did build, where they shouldn't. And
let them build there. Go ahead, let them
so yeah, just flood on the next flood, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But so they've controlled a lot of that, even though there was a lot of damage done before that ever came out. And I was lucky to be employed with a part of that. Mm-hmm. I just retired a year ago.
From Swiftmud?
I retired from Swiftmud after 32 years.
Wow.
And I buying land for them for environmental reasons.
Nice.
And then I retired for a year. Well, then I went back to work when Pasco County established their own environmental lands program through their Penny for Pasco, and I was one of the first ones hired to take over the new program, and so I was there. Cool. I was there 7 years.
Wow.
So I just retired a year ago. So I had 39 years in helping to protect natural resources.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
And buying land. That's what I did.
you probably have a little bit of a jaded view there, and how do you think the people of, let's just say, instead of the state of Florida, Hernando County, even Pasco County, does the general population feel about our natural landscape here? Do you feel like they're supportive of preserving?
A lot of them are.
Yeah.
A lot of them still don't get the reason. They think, we have plenty land already protected.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you're not going to please everybody.
Right.
There's
Right.
just no way. But I think we've gone a long way to this date. What we've got. I just hopefully the state, because it can't be done with just a little bit of county revenue, but have these small programs, they help. But you need big money like what the state was really putting out during those 30-some years that I was involved, because they were literally passing legislation where they had these bills worth millions and millions that we spent.
Wow.
President of the Hernando Historical Museum Association.
There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. And can you describe a little bit what that organization does for those people who may not know?
Okay. Well, you know where the museum is on top of the hill.
Yes.
Okay. It was when the Museum Association was established back in the 70s to try to preserve the old house that was literally condemned to be torn down. And the late Dr. Hensley owned the block where the house is.
Okay.
And he was going to tear down the house and build a medical center there.
Okay.
But the museum had a group of people that got involved with him, and he thought it was a great thing they were trying to do, preserve the house, because it had been there. It was an 1856 building.
Oh wow.
So
and you're talking about the Mace Stringer Museum.
Yeah, the Mace Stringer Museum is what it's known as. And so they worked with him. He worked, and he ended up selling them the property.
Wow.
And they did a lot of fundraisers and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So the house was gradually brought back to what you see today. If it hadn't been for him, it would have never happened. Right. So, but gives us money to do the stuff we need to do on both the Mace Stringer House and the 1885 train depot in South Brooksville.
Mm-hmm. And I understand there's a lot of records kept at that train depot.
Yes.
Are those records are there duplicates of those records elsewhere in the county, or is that the
A lot of those are originals, because we were going through a period of time at a lot of the public people in the courthouse, they wanted to get rid of the records because everything was going online. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of original stuff as well that we were able to get, and we didn't want to see them destroyed.
Absolutely, and those are available to the public.
Yes, they can make an appointment to come in and do their research on the death records and so forth. So.
Great resource.
But we have that museum is not just a railroad museum. We have other things to show, country articles that have been used back in early part of the century and everything. So it's quite interesting if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. And
we have Brooksville's first fire engine there. It was in 1925.
Really?
Yeah, it's on display.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, see, the more things we have here, it helps the tourism. Because if you've got more things for people coming in to visit rather than just one museum, I think it helps the county's economy, because there's a lot of things we'll have here for them to come through and see.
As a reason to stay overnight.
Another reason to stay overnight. Yep.